All right, so we've spent the last two deep dives really kind of digging into Sino-Japanese relations,
Yeah.
haven't we? From those really intense firsthand accounts of the Nanjing Massacre
Yeah.
to kind of the whole intricate world of diplomacy and how
Yeah.
the different narratives that go with it. It's been quite a journey.
It has.
But I think now it's time to shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Turn our gaze forward.
I agree.
And ask, like, okay, what does the future hold for these two, powerhouses of Asia?
Right. It's a question with incredibly high stakes, isn't it? The past, as we've seen, never really goes away.
Right.
It just keeps on shaping the present.
Yeah.
And in the case of China and Japan, it really throws a long shadow over any attempts to kind of build a stable and cooperative future.
Absolutely. And that Nanjing Massacre in particular continues to be such a major point of contention.
Yeah.
This wound that just has not fully healed.
Right.
How can these two nations possibly even navigate this shared history, all the tragedy and trauma, and move towards something better, a more positive future?
Well, one thing that immediately jumps out from all the material we've looked at is the stark contrast in how the Nanjing Massacre is remembered and interpreted in both countries.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just different perspectives. It's fundamentally different narratives that just fuel this distrust, this ongoing distrust, and just make reconciliations so difficult.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. What are some of the key differences in these narratives that we need to understand?
Well, in China, the Nanjing Massacre is central to the national memory of Japanese aggression during World War II.
Okay.
It's a symbol of victimhood, brutality of war.
Yeah.
And it serves as this reminder of the deep scars left by Japanese imperialism. Public opinion polls consistently show that a vast majority of Chinese people view Japan's wartime actions with resentment and distrust.
Yeah.
And this historical memory is actively cultivated through education, museums, memorials, just making sure it remains this potent force in shaping how they view Japan today.
So in China, the memory of the Nanjing Massacre is very much alive.
Yes.
And it informs the way they view Japan today.
Absolutely.
What about Japan? We know there's a range of views.
Yeah.
But what are some of the dominant narratives?
Yeah.
And how do they contribute to this divide?
Well, that's where things get really interesting and also much more complex.
Okay.
In Japan, you see a spectrum of views on the Nanjing Massacre that range from full acknowledgement and remorse to sometimes outright denial or attempts to downplay how bad it was, the severity of the atrocities.
Right.
There are those that actively work to keep the memory alive, to push for the government to be more accountable, and to offer a more forthright apology.
Yeah.
But there's also a powerful segment of Japanese society that just downplays or dismisses the event, arguing that just focusing on the past hinders progress and prevents Japan from moving on.
It sounds like this internal struggle within Japan itself is a major factor in how the country approaches its relationship with China.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to, the wartime responsibility and reconciliation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this internal debate often spills over into politics and influences diplomatic efforts, shaping public discourse. For example, there's been instances where Japanese textbooks have been revised to downplay or omit references to wartime atrocities, sparking outrage in China and further deepening the divide between the two nations. It becomes this cyclical pattern where efforts towards reconciliation are met with skepticism and distrust, fueled by these conflicting narratives.
So if these fundamentally different understandings of history are such a major obstacle, what hope is there for a better future?
Right.
Is genuine reconciliation even possible?
Yeah.
When the two sides can't even agree on the basic facts.
Right.
What happened?
It's a tough question, no doubt. But amidst all the complexities and this deep-seated mistrust, there have been attempts to bridge this divide.
Okay.
And one particularly noteworthy example is the case of Haruyama Yukio, a former Japanese prime minister who took a rather bold step.
You're talking about his visit to Nanjing.
Yes.
And his public expression of remorse for the atrocities committed during the war.
That's right. In 2013, Hatoyama visited the Nanjing Massacre Memorial Hall and offered a personal apology for the suffering caused by the Japanese Imperial Army.
I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
It definitely made headlines.
It did.
And sparked a lot of debate.
Yes.
Both in Japan and China.
Sure.
What was the overall reaction to his actions?
Well, it was a mixed bag, as you can imagine. In Japan, Haruyama was praised by some for his courage and sincerity, while others criticized him for bowing to pressure from China or reopening old wounds. His actions highlighted the deep divisions within Japanese society over how to deal with this legacy of the war.
And what about in China? Did they view his apology as a genuine step towards reconciliation?
Again, the response was complex and nuanced. Some Chinese people welcomed Haruyama's apology as a sign of progress, while others just dismissed it as too little too late, or even politically motivated. The differing interpretations really highlight that deep-seated distrust that exists between the two nations. Even a seemingly straightforward act of apology gets tangled in the web of historical memory and political maneuvering.
So even when there is an attempt at reconciliation, like Haruyama's apology, it seems like those underlying narratives and the lack of trust just makes it extremely difficult to move forward. What does this tell us about the future of Sino-Japanese relations?
It underscores the immense challenge ahead. Reconciliation can't be achieved through symbolic gestures alone. It requires a deeper, more sustained effort to confront the past honestly. And to acknowledge the pain and suffering that was caused.
I see what you mean. It's not just about apologies. It's about actions that demonstrate a genuine commitment to understanding and addressing the lasting impact of those events. But what concrete steps can be taken to move beyond these entrenched narratives and build a foundation for a more positive future?
Well, one crucial step is for Japan to face the truth about the Nanjing Massacre and offer a genuine and unequivocal apology. And this doesn't mean simply repeating past statements or engaging in political maneuvering. It means going beyond the symbolics and taking concrete actions that demonstrate a real commitment to making amends for the past.
You've mentioned this idea of a genuine apology before. It's clearly like a central theme when we talk about the future of Sino-Japanese relations. But what does a genuine apology actually look like in this context? It's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. But what are the specific elements that would make it truly meaningful and impactful?
That's a great question, and it's one that deserves careful consideration. We've seen examples of apologies that have fallen short, either because they were perceived as insincere or forced, or lacking in concrete action to back them up. A truly meaningful apology needs to address several key elements.
Okay, let's unpack those elements then. What needs to be present for an apology to have a real chance of fostering reconciliation?
First and foremost, it needs to be unequivocally clear and unambiguous. There's no room for vague language or attempts to minimize the severity of the events. It requires acknowledging the full scope of the atrocities committed, including the systematic rape, torture, and murder of countless innocent civilians. This acknowledgement needs to be grounded in historical evidence and a willingness to engage with the perspectives of the victims and their families.
So no more skirting around the issue or trying to water down the historical record.
Exactly.
It sounds like this requires a level of honesty and transparency that has perhaps been lacking in previous attempts at reconciliation.
Absolutely. And alongside this clear and unambiguous acknowledgement, a genuine apology needs to express sincere remorse and empathy for the suffering inflicted. It's not enough to simply say, we're sorry, without conveying a deep understanding of the pain and trauma caused by these actions. It requires demonstrating a genuine desire to learn from the past and prevent such horrors from ever happening again.
That makes sense. Words alone can feel hollow. Without a genuine sense of empathy, and a commitment to taking responsibility for the past. Are there specific actions, though, that could accompany such an apology? To demonstrate that it's not just empty words.
That's a crucial point. A genuine apology needs to be backed up by tangible actions that demonstrate a commitment to making amends.
Okay.
This could involve things like providing more substantial compensation to the victims and their families, supporting efforts to document and preserve the historical record of the Nanjing Massacre, and incorporating a more accurate and nuanced account of these events into Japanese textbooks and educational curricula.
Those are all concrete steps that would show a real willingness to go beyond rhetoric and take tangible action to address the wrongs of the past. But I imagine even with all these elements in place, there would still be skepticism and distrust.
Of course.
Given the history of tension between these two nations.
Of course, rebuilding trust takes time and consistent effort.
Yeah.
But a genuine apology coupled with these concrete actions would be a significant step in the right direction. It would send a powerful message to the Chinese people that Japan is serious about confronting its past and building a new chapter in the relationship based on mutual respect and understanding.
It sounds like you're suggesting that this genuine apology combined with tangible actions is essential not only for addressing the past, but also for laying the groundwork for a more positive future.
Exactly. Without this foundation of honesty, acknowledgement, and a demonstrated commitment to making amends, it's difficult to imagine how these two nations can truly move forward and build a stable and cooperative relationship. The past will continue to cast a long shadow, hindering progress on issues of shared interest, like economic cooperation, regional security, and addressing global challenges like climate change.
So this isn't just about righting a historical wrong.
Right.
It's about creating the conditions for a more peaceful and prosperous future.
Yes.
For both countries and the region as a whole.
Precisely. And this brings us to another crucial aspect of building a more positive future, shifting the narrative.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity.
Okay.
What do you mean by shifting the narrative?
Well, we've talked extensively about how differing narratives of the past, particularly surrounding the Nanjing Massacre, fuel mistrust and hinder reconciliation. Moving forward, it's vital to find ways to bridge this narrative gap and foster a more nuanced and shared understanding of history.
That sounds like a daunting task.
Yeah.
Given how deeply entrenched these narratives are.
It is.
On both sides.
Yeah.
How can such a shift be achieved?
It requires a multifaceted approach.
Okay.
That involves education, cultural exchange, and open dialogue.
For example, encouraging more collaboration between Chinese and Japanese historians to conduct joint research and develop educational materials that present a more balanced and nuanced view of history.
So promoting more interaction and collaboration between scholars and educators from both countries would help to create a more shared understanding of the past. What about cultural exchange? How could that play a role?
Cultural exchange programs can be incredibly powerful in breaking down stereotypes and fostering empathy. Imagine more student exchange programs, artist collaborations, and opportunities for people-to-people interactions. These experiences can help to humanize the other, challenge preconceived notions, and create personal connections that transcend national boundaries.
It's about building those bridges of understanding and empathy through shared experiences and human connection.
And what about open dialogue? What role does that play in shifting the narrative?
Open and honest dialogue, even when it's uncomfortable, is essential for confronting difficult issues and finding common ground. This could involve creating platforms for open discussions about the war and its legacy, involving academics, journalists, policymakers, and even ordinary citizens. It's about creating spaces where different perspectives can be heard and debated respectfully without resorting to nationalistic rhetoric or historical revisionism.
So it's about fostering a culture of dialogue and understanding.
Yes.
Where difficult conversations can be had without resorting to blame or denial.
Exactly.
But I imagine this process of shifting the narrative will take time.
It will.
And require a genuine commitment from both sides.
Absolutely. It's a long-term endeavor that requires patience, persistence, and a willingness to challenge ingrained beliefs and assumptions. But it's a crucial step towards building a more stable and positive future for Sino-Japanese relations.
So it sounds like we're talking about a multifaceted approach that goes beyond simply addressing the past.
Yeah.
It's about actively working to reshape the relationship.
Right.
Fostering a more nuanced understanding of history and creating opportunities for connection and dialogue.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that this is not just a task for governments and diplomats. It's something that individuals can contribute to as well.
That's an interesting point. How can ordinary people who might feel far removed from the complexities of international relations play a role in shaping the future of Sino-Japanese relations?
There are countless ways for individuals to get involved.
Okay.
It starts with educating ourselves about the history of this complex relationship, seeking out diverse perspectives and challenging our own biases.
Yeah.
We can support organizations that promote peace and understanding.
Okay.
Engage in respectful dialogue with people from different backgrounds, and advocate for policies that foster cooperation and cultural exchange.
So it's about recognizing that we all have a role to play, no matter how small, in building a more peaceful and understanding world.
Precisely. And remember, even small actions, when multiplied across millions of people, can create a powerful ripple effect, contributing to a shift in attitudes and ultimately shaping a more positive future for Sino-Japanese relations.
This has been a truly enlightening conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, from the importance of a genuine apology for the Nanjing Massacre to the need for a multifaceted approach to shifting the narrative and fostering a more nuanced understanding of history.
Right.
But we've also touched on something quite profound: the power of individual action. To contribute to a more peaceful and cooperative world.
Yeah, it really has.
It feels like we've been on this incredible journey, unpacking all these layers of history, politics, and cultural memory. And now, as we stand on the precipice of the future, I'm wondering what sticks with you most from all of this?
For me, it's that while the historical wounds run deep and the challenges are immense, there's also this sense of possibility, a recognition that the future isn't predetermined. It's shaped by the choices we make, both individually and collectively.
I love that perspective. It's a reminder that we're not just passive observers of history. We can actively participate in shaping a better future.
Absolutely. And in the case of Sino-Japanese relations, that participation requires a shift in mindset. A move away from the zero-sum mentality that often characterizes international relations.
Help me understand what you mean by zero-sum mentality in this context.
It's the idea that one nation's gain necessarily comes at the expense of another. It's a competitive, even adversarial approach to international relations that often leads to mistrust, conflict, and missed opportunities for cooperation. In the context of Sino-Japanese relations, this mentality can be seen in the historical baggage of war and imperialism, the economic competition for resources and markets, and even the way national narratives are constructed and disseminated.
So it's this underlying assumption that any gain for China is a loss for Japan.
Exactly.
And vice versa.
And that kind of thinking can be incredibly damaging, leading to a self-fulfilling prophecy of suspicion and hostility. What's needed is a shift towards a more cooperative framework, a recognition that these two nations can both benefit from a stable and prosperous Asia.
I see where you're going with this. It's about moving beyond this us versus them mentality. And embracing a more collaborative approach. That recognizes shared interests and common goals. But how do we get there? How do we make that shift in mindset happen? Especially given the deep-seated historical tensions and ongoing political differences.
It's not easy, of course. But I believe it starts with fostering greater understanding and empathy, both at the individual and societal level. We've already touched on the importance of cultural exchange and education. But there's also a need for more nuanced and balanced media coverage. More opportunities for dialogue and debate, and a greater willingness to challenge our own biases and assumptions.
So it's about actively working to broaden our understanding of the other.
Yeah.
Recognizing their humanity.
Right.
And appreciating the complexities of their perspectives. It's about moving away from simplistic narratives and embracing a more nuanced view of the world. But how do we translate that kind of thinking into concrete action?
Well, one practical step would be to encourage more people-to-people interactions, particularly among younger generations who are less bound by the historical baggage of the past.
Yeah.
Imagine more student exchange programs, joint research projects, and collaborative initiatives in areas like environmental protection or disaster relief.
Those are great examples.
Yeah.
Creating opportunities for people to connect on a human level, work together towards shared goals, and build relationships based on mutual respect can go a long way in breaking down barriers.
Absolutely.
And fostering a more positive and cooperative atmosphere.
Exactly. And alongside these grassroots efforts, there's also a role for governments and policymakers to play in creating a more conducive environment for reconciliation and cooperation. This could involve things like establishing joint commissions to address historical grievances, promoting trade and investment partnerships, and working together on regional security initiatives.
So it's about creating a multi-pronged approach that involves actions at both the individual and governmental levels.
Yes.
It's about weaving together a tapestry of understanding, cooperation, and shared purpose. But all of this hinges on one crucial element, doesn't it? Trust.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Trust is the bedrock of any healthy and sustainable relationship. And it's something that's been severely eroded in the case of China and Japan.
Yeah.
Rebuilding that trust will require consistent effort, transparency, and willingness to address past wrongs honestly and empathetically.
I think we've come full circle here.
Yeah.
We started this deep dive by talking about the importance of a genuine apology for the Nanjing Massacre. And now we're talking about rebuilding trust.
Yeah.
It's clear that these two things are inextricably linked.
Yeah.
A genuine apology coupled with concrete actions to make amends is essential for laying the foundation for a more trusting and cooperative relationship.
Without that foundation, it's difficult to imagine how these two nations can overcome the legacy of the past and move forward together towards a more peaceful and prosperous future.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
It has.
It's given me a much deeper understanding of the complexities of Sino-Japanese relations.
Yeah.
The historical forces that continue to shape the present and the potential pathways towards a more positive future.
Right.
But it's also left me with a sense of hope.
Good.
A belief that change is possible if we're willing to put in the effort.
Yes.
To challenge our own assumptions and to embrace a more cooperative and empathetic approach to engaging with the world.
And that's a powerful message to carry forward, isn't it? The future is not set in stone.
Yeah.
It's shaped by the choices we make today. Let's choose to be architects of a more peaceful and understanding world.
Right.
A world where China and Japan can coexist harmoniously and contribute to the well-being of all humankind.
That's a beautiful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Sino-Japanese relations. We hope it sparked your curiosity, deepened your understanding, and inspired you to be a force for positive change in the world.
It's been a pleasure sharing this journey with you.
Yeah.
Remember, even small actions, multiplied by millions, can create powerful waves of change.
Right.
Let's all do our part to build a brighter future for China, Japan, and the world as a whole.